Ryegrass is now becoming problem in the northern region. We found that it's moving further north, and that's why I think before it, and we know already that it is the number one weed in Australia. So before it becomes problem, we should really find whether we can control this one using cultural operations. For example, using narrow row spacing or other weed competitive control methods. So I think it's not always the case that chickpea is always a poor competitive crop. I think we can make it more competitive by using a narrow row spacing. Now I think we need to also see that we should not go that narrow that we have got high disease pressure. So that's why we wanted to evaluate the effect of narrow row spacing on weeds. And I think we found that using narrow row spacing, you can make this crop more competitive compared with your weeds. And recently there were few studies at different farmers' fields, also at different locations, and in which they found that chickpea can be grown at narrow row spacing. So in this study we used two row spacings, 25 centimeter and 75 centimeter, where farmers mostly plant their crop. And then we wanted to also evaluate, is there any difference between varieties, and we had two varieties, AHRI and Simmer. So Simmer is a new variety which they call it spreading type, and spreading type of plant always known to be more competitive. So we wanted to evaluate this also. And then most important one, I had 4 different weed infestation periods, and that's one I think we need to really understand why I included. One was totally weed free, so we also wanted to see whether in weed free situation is there any difference in yield between narrow rows and wide rows spacing. And then second was completely weedy, where we allowed weeds to grow from planting to maturity. And there were 2 more, and in which we kept plots weed free for the first 3 weeks, and in another one we kept those plots weed free for first 6 weeks. Now idea here is different. Why we did that one? Because if a farmer is applying pre-emergence herbicides, and then that herbicides may keep your crop weed free in the first 3 weeks, okay? And if it is a weak herbicide or it degrade, it may keep for first 6 weeks. That's why we wanted to keep that weed free, and then we wanted to see the role of crop competition, because I personally see the role of crop competition only after few weeks of planting, not just from start. I think in general, first thing was narrow row spacing, okay? That suppressed weeds more than wide row spacing, and even in weed free conditions yields were higher in narrow row spacings, okay? And second one was, yes, there was little difference between varieties. It was not huge difference, but I think there was little difference, and what we were expecting, we got those results. So Simmer was found more competitive than AHRI. But I think we need to do these ones on at different locations, so we can conclude that yes, this variety is more competitive. And then another one was, yes, in weed, if you can keep your plots weed free for the first 3 or 6 weeks, then I think there is not much impact of weeds on your crop. So I think that's what it highlighted mainly. Use narrow row spacing that can effectively manage weeds and keep your crop weed free for first few weeks. If crop competition can suppress even 10%, if it can provide even 10% weed control, I would be happy, more than happy. So the idea is, how can we integrate that with our herbicides? So herbicides are must, we should not go away, but how can we keep them for longer? That's why we need to include crop competition. So yes, definitely we need to bring pre-emergence herbicides, so that if you plant a crop in weed-free situation, there is always, I think there is no doubt, always there is a benefit. And then later on your crop competition can suppress those late emerging weeds.